When you think about the NES, what's the first game that pops into your head? A lot of people will probably default to a classic first-party Nintendo franchise, something like the original Super Mario Bros. Or the first Legend of Zelda game, just to give an example. Many others might also have other third-party franchises come to mind, such as Konami's Contra or Castlevania series, or Capcom's long line of Mega Man games that were released on the console. Perhaps you're the oddball and think of something like all the awful LJN licensed games, or the shocking amount of Bible games that were released against Nintendo's wishes. Look, the point is, when thinking of Nintendo during this era, there are a lot of different directions to go in. For me, besides the aforementioned Mario and Zelda, I also instantly think of Metroid. Besides it being released at around the same time as those two games, it also was, and still is, one of Nintendo's most well-known and well-respected franchises. It wasn't always that way. I'm sure any Metroid fan will remember the Metroid Dark Ages, also known as 2011 to 2017. But in recent years, the series has rebounded a pretty substantial amount to a point where people can now recognize Samus from her actual games instead of just Super Smash Bros. Thank God. It's been quite a ride for Samus in those soon-to-be 40 years since the first game's release. Let's see where the ride began with Metroid for the NES. Metroid began development as an action game being co-developed by Nintendo R&D 1 and Intelligent Systems, and initially began life under the working title Space Hunter. Very original, I know. The actual title didn't come about until later in development by combining the words Metro and Android together, although it's unclear who actually came up with the Metroid name. Samus herself has a fun origin to her name as well. She was named after soccer legend Pele, or more accurately, his birth name, which I am too white to attempt to pronounce, so here it is on screen. Yeah, one of the best football players of all time is indirectly the reason we have Samus today. The story goes that the character designer of Samus, Yoshio Sakamoto, initially thought Pele's first name was Samus instead of Edson, and by combining the Aran in Arantes, you get Samus Aran. Funny how the series is just starting and Sakamoto is already fucking up Samus's characterization. I'm just kidding, I haven't played Other M, I can't make that joke yet. Okay, for as much as people criticize Sakamoto for certain aspects of the franchise, he really did help create something legendary with little actual experience in game development at that time, alongside Hiroji Kiyotaki and Hirofumi Matsuoka. He mentions in interviews that Gunpei Yokoi, who was producer of the original Metroid, was a big reason why he and the rest of the development team were able to finish this game in a somewhat timely manner. One of the biggest impacts Metroid had in gaming was the fact that it was one of the earliest games to have a female protagonist. It wasn't the first, that would be Baraduke's protagonist if you were curious, but Samus is probably the most well-known female protagonist in gaming. Nintendo kept Samus's gender well hidden too. In the game's manual, Samus is always referred to with male pronouns instead of female. This wasn't going to happen initially either. Samus wasn't decided to be female until a member of the dev team basically said, "Hey, wouldn't it be kinda sick to reveal that you were actually playing as a woman the whole time?" And the rest of the team was like, "Hold on, he has something here." The team member could have been inspired by the Alien series of movies that famously had Sigourney Weaver as the main lead. This wouldn't be the first time these two franchises share similarities, so keep that in mind. I know a bunch of kids back in the 80s were stunned to see that you played as a woman throughout the adventure, mostly because that wasn't really a thing back then. They were usually the damsel in distress, not the badass bounty hunter Samus is, so Metroid is pretty revolutionary in that regard. Metroid didn't just innovate in that aspect of gaming though. Its side-scrolling gameplay was something not seen too often in that era of gaming. Generally, when you saw a side-scroller at that time, you see the character you control go to the right. Here though, you'll be going left, right, up, down, all throughout the planet's Epis. Going left in a side-scroller was genuinely innovative at that point in time. The most famous example of this is right at the beginning of the game. Most players would immediately start by going right, only to find a giant wall that you can't go under. That's when you would start going back to the left where you find the morph ball, letting you progress to the next areas. So, you can go left and right now. Where are you supposed to go in this entire planet? That's the other big core aspect of the gameplay. Metroid is a totally non-linear adventure. You have no indication on where you are, where to go, or what to do. Sure, there's a general storyline, I guess. Samus is a bounty hunter hired by the Galactic Federation to stop the space pirates and their leader, Mother Brain, from using the powerful Metroids to take over the galaxy. Notice how I summed it up in one sentence? That's pretty much all you're getting plot-wise. Besides that, there's nothing else. You're dropped in the middle of the planet with no weapons and no real idea where to go, and since this is a game from the mid to late 80s, you better believe there's not going to be a map function, so good luck, Samus! You're gonna need it. It is pretty easy to be able to explore the planet on my own, but this does lead to some problems. The game can be really guilty of copy-paste design. There are a bunch of rooms that look nearly identical to each other, and it can make it really confusing to travel through. This is why I suggest using an external map if you intend to play the first Metroid, because trust me, you will get lost if you try and play it without one. It's with a map where I learned all those secret energy tanks are, or where to re-get the Ice Beam after realizing I needed it desperately. This is something other games like the first Zelda or Simon's Quest also dealt with, to be fair, so this is just really a sign of the times. To stick with the Zelda comparisons for a second, Metroid also has a save feature, but only in Japan. Yeah, in Japan, Metroid was released on the Famicom disk system, which lets you save your progress on these little discs here. However, when the game came overseas, the developers resorted to inputting these obscenely long passwords to get back to where we left off. I mean, I would have preferred a save battery in the cartridge like the first Zelda, but I know those were very expensive to produce, so I guess not every game could have a save feature. Planet Zebes is quite the weird, strange, or whatever other synonym for the word odd you want to use to travel through. The designers took inspiration from the works of H.R. Geiger when making the world, and you can definitely see the inspiration. It feels like areas like Norfair and Kraidslayer are more organic in nature with their bubbles and greenish-brown color palette respectively. It feels more dreadful and dangerous the further you travel on the planet. The music leans into this dread as well. Composer Hirokazu Tanaka did a great job conveying this feeling. It starts out really adventurous in Brinstar, but moving to Norfair or Ridley's Lair, and the music shifts to a really eerie vibe. By the time you get to the final area, Torian, it's just a mess of machines beeping and lava boiling. The tracks work great for the atmosphere, but for the most part, I wouldn't say they're really too memorable. I mean, Brinstar is a classic for sure, and Kraid's Lair can almost put you in a hypnotic trance with how it drones on and on and on. Everything else, though, doesn't really stay in my head for very long. They certainly aren't bad, though, I want to make that clear. It's just like I said, they're not very memorable, I guess you could say. As you travel through the planet, you'll find upgrades so Samus doesn't get utterly manhandled by the enemies she encounters. Samus, to start out, has jack shit at her disposal. Her power beam doesn't even cover the entire screen. You gotta grab a whole separate beam upgrade for full coverage. I mean, what kind of shit is this? Slowly but surely, though, you'll be able to upgrade your arsenal. Missiles for some extra firepower and open up these red doors here. Bombs open up secret passages, energy tanks give you an extra 100 health, and the high jump boots let you jump a lot higher. There are 2 beam upgrades to get in this game. Well, technically 3 if you count the dumbass long beam, but regardless. The wave beam is way more powerful than the base power beam, and it also lets you hit those harder to reach targets on the ground. However, this pales in comparison to the importance of the ice beam. It might not be as powerful as the wave beam, and it'll take twice as long to kill anything because of how it freezes them. However, if you plan on finishing this game, you absolutely need the ice beam. Whenever I revisit the original Metroid, the very few times I actually do, I almost never get the wave beam because it simply isn't as useful. It doesn't help that the beams don't stack either, so if you need the ice beam, you gotta travel all the way back to whatever Chozo statue has one. I got the wave beam in this playthrough, and within 20 minutes I realized I needed to reacquire the ice beam to continue forward, which ended up being a fun backtracking adventure, massive air quotes over fun. I suggest just ignoring the wave beam, unless you're going for 100% in the game. Finally, there's the screw attack, which is just plain awesome. Besides being the name of the classic website/YouTube channel, it lets you kill basically anything by spin jumping. There are some really strange times though where I'm trying to spin jump, nothing happens, and I get hit by whatever I'm trying to kill. This game has its moments where it can be pretty jank. Consequences of an early NES game, I'm aware, but it's a little annoying at times. The game lags like crazy when there's too much going on screen, which in certain areas is really frequent. Samus's physics are a little strange too. Sometimes she'll fly around all over the screen if multiple enemies are on her, and since there aren't a ton of invincibility frames at her disposal, she can take a lot of damage fast. Something about how she jumps is really weird too. I'm not sure how to describe it, but the best way I can is that you have a really slow, really floaty jump. Plus, you carry a little momentum with your jump, so landing on narrow platforms can be a challenge at times. Enemies at times are really stingy about how often they drop items. You might find yourself needing to quickly grind for health or missiles, and these guys simply refuse to give you anything at all. Or sometimes they'll give you the exact opposite of what you want, like missiles if you need health or vice versa, which in my opinion is a lot more frustrating. My favorite oversight in the game though involves the door transitions. You would think you'd be safe going from room to room, but nope. Some enemies will sneak in a hit as you're transitioning. This is at least kind of funny, but what's not funny is opening a door and instantly getting jumped by an enemy you had zero chance to dodge or shoot. I can't stand that shit, and it happens just enough to where you'll notice it. The game's jank at least can give you some neat sequence breaks. The explosion from your Morphball bombs can help you get to higher areas, and door jumping can let you get the barrier suit early if you're skilled enough. I'm not though, this shit took forever for me to figure out. Seriously, it probably took me like a half hour to 45 minutes just for me to get this trick correct. I got super heated trying to do it. Sequence breaks in Metroid games are generally more associated with Super Metroid, but it is cool to see some as early as the first game. Here's a quick tip if you want to save time, by the way. Need to get back to Brinstar and you're really far away? Just get yourself killed and you'll respawn right at the starting area, which depending on where you are, will save a good chunk of time. Although you do start off at 30 health no matter how many energy tanks you have, so there is a bit of a trade-off. Most of the enemies in this game don't really amount to anything memorable. Shit, I couldn't even tell you the names of most of these base enemies. They certainly aren't no Goombas or Octoroks, that's for sure. The exceptions in this game are the two boss fights you have, Kraid and Ridley, who's named after Ridley Scott, director of the Alien movies. See, I told you those Alien references were a thing. Even still, they really aren't too hard. Ridley is an absolute joke. Just freezes projectiles, stand there, and pump it full of missiles. Nothing to it. Kraid is a bit tougher with all the shit he's throwing at you, but constantly dropping bombs on him will usually do the trick. A lot of people would suggest that you go after Ridley first instead of Kraid, and I have to agree with those people. I think Kraid would be pretty tough to defeat with the less powerful Samus. Honestly, the trek to get to both of these goons is harder than the fights themselves, especially Kraid's lair. There's enemies to deal with, but actually navigating the planet is a nightmare. Again, use a guide if you play this game, it'll save so much time. After taking care of both of them, you can head on to the final area, Torian. Here, you finally get to meet the Metroids. These little bastards will jump on you and start draining your health if you aren't careful. The only way to kill them is to freeze them with the Ice Beam and shoot them with 5 missiles. As long as you take your time in the first part, you'll be alright. Plus, the Metroids drop a ton of health and ammo if you need it, so grinding them isn't the worst idea in the world. The second half of Torian sucks ass, and it's pretty much because of these rings, that alone. They randomly appear, and due to your limited mobility, you'll be getting hit by them a bunch. The final room houses Mother Brain, and she just kinda sits there, menacingly. She doesn't do anything at all except let herself get annihilated. The challenge comes from the turrets all around you with those stupid fucking rings. God, I hate these little shits. Eventually, Mother Brain dies in a massive explosion. Hope you don't have epilepsy, by the way, because the screen flashes a bright white for a good few seconds. It hurts my eyes whenever I see it, so be careful of that. There's a reason the screen is blurred right now, trust me, that shit hurts. After climbing up this long shaft, the day is saved. Samus reveals herself that she's a woman, and the credits roll. You can get different endings of Samus depending on how fast you beat the game. The most famous one is her in a bikini, shown only if you beat the game in under an hour. The funniest one to me, though, is if you take more than 30 hours to finish the game, Samus just has her back to you in disgust, and it looks like she's almost crying. To be fair, even if you didn't have a map on standby, it would be kind of insane to take over 30 hours to finish this, though I'm sure someone, somewhere out there, did it. Metroid, just like many other early NES games, has definitely aged over time. Comparing it to the other big name Nintendo franchises also starting around that time, Mario and Zelda, I actually think this has aged the best out of those three, especially compared to Zelda 1. That game is aged like milk. Even though I think it's an alright enough game, I would never recommend a new fan start with this game though. It's too open-ended and too frustrating at times for a newcomer to enjoy. I'd say only the more ardent Metroid fans would find any enjoyment playing the first Metroid. Not to say there's no enjoyment to be found, but it can be a bit challenging to overlook its flaws. I'd still say it's not a bad game though, and I respect it for what it did to the industry. What's important though is that fans at the time liked the game enough to where a sequel was commissioned. Not for the NES or not for the upcoming Super Nintendo, but for the hot new handheld at the time, the Game Boy.